Hi and welcome to yet another edition of Rabbi Stein's PPE. For those of you who are joining us for the very first time, this is a place where we learn some cool insights about the weekly Parsha, maybe even dabble into some ideas of tefillah, of prayer, and overall have a wonderful Jewish experience. So, this week's Parsha, without further ado, is Parshat Beshalach, the Parsha where we have Kriyat Yamsuf, Shabbos Shira, as it's otherwise known as, the song at the sea, one of the most monumental events in Jewish history. But I actually don't want to talk about that right now because I want to talk about something so profound, so amazing. It boggles my mind. We ever wonder how many Jews actually left Egypt? How many Jews were there? The population, what was it like? Was it a small population? We're talking about a number of slaves over here. So the Torah tells us in the beginning of Sefer Shmos that there were 70 people who went down to Mitzrayim. 70 people who went down to Egypt. We also know that they were successful and they multiplied and they grew and grew and grew, so much so that Egypt was terrified that the Jewish people might ally themselves with the enemies of the Egyptians, and it would spell certain doom for Egypt as they knew it. So what do? They instituted slavery and oppression and tried to belittle their morale and break down their numbers. End of the day, the Torah tells us the following. V'chamushim alu bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. V'chamushim alu. And they were, as the Torah tells us, they were the word chamushim. So what does chamushim mean? So the English translation and many other commentaries say they were armed. They had swords and shields and equipment to protect themselves along the journey of Egypt. Now, the Medrash, the Talmud, offers another insight. It would seem rather superfluous. It would seem rather excessive to say that the Jewish people were armed. They just witnessed the 10 plagues. They witnessed a complete destruction of the very fabric of Egyptian existence. Why would they need to be armed? Why would they need a sword and shield? You have God who's doing miracles to fight your wars, to wage your battles. So now they offer another insight. Chamushim has the word chamesh in it, or a chomesh. A chomesh is 1/5. We learn later on, right before Har Sinai, that they do a census. How many men were there? 600,000 men, aged 20 to 60. Double that for the amount of women. Add another margin of error of 300,000 for children under the age of 20, over the age of 60. You have 1.5 million people that actually left Mitzrayim. If you take 1.5, you multiply it by 5, you have 7.5 million. That was the total population before the plague of darkness. 7.5 million people was the population of the Jewish people in Egypt. During the plague of darkness, however, 4/5 were wiped out. They didn't want to leave. They were afraid. And they said, rather we die in Egypt than the unknown of the desert of what's yet to come. So they say 4/5 of the Jewish people were left behind in Egypt. So that's 1/5 that actually left. Now here's some more mind-boggling idea. 7.5 minus 1.5 gives you 6. 6 million Jews died during the plague of darkness. There's an incredible amount of correlations. I'm not going to delve into that right now because it's beyond the scope of this video. But the idea here is, when we look deeper at the Parsha, we find messaging that was B'yamim Ahem, Bizman Hazeh, back in those days and in our days as well. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and we'll see you next time.